Alright, in the last video I was able to successfully get my code to work, but I'm not exactly sure why or how it is working now, and I also don't know what was broken about it. So in this video I'm going to be trying to go and investigate about all of the different moving components, because we actually have a fair amount of moving components right now, which is number one, we have entity framework. An entity framework is working with a database. Okay, well, our database is also changing. It used to be just a normal Postgres database, but then we changed it to be a Postgres database that is an different image. It is a different image of a Postgres database that has the settings, latent settings for PG vector. Okay, now I have my C sharp, which is another entity. Now my C sharp has these things which are called migrations. Okay, that's in C sharp. It has the actual classes that represent the data. Okay, it sets up the PG vector. It sets up all of the data, and that's different than the classes that I have in my C sharp application. And then it uses entity framework to interact with the database. So there's a lot of moving parts. I'm trying to understand how all of these things are uh, interacting. So I'm going to move myself here. I used Copilot and it was able to solve some of the issues. Now I'm trying to go here to Gemini and understand, okay, well, what did it actually do? And then get into some of the conceptual things about trying to really hone in on, okay, component number one, component number two, component number three, how are these interacting and what is the conceptual idea behind them? All right, so I just copy and pasted this in and said this is their response. Let me show you. This is their response, right? Just copy and pasted that. And then I said, here's my bid engine, my new DB context, I should say, class. Okay. And then I said, it's working now, but I want to know what happened. Can you explain what Copilot did, why it passed, and what the problems are? Okay. So, the core problem, relational versus dictionary. The biggest source of frustration was that app and tests were living in two different worlds. Okay, so what that's talking about is I have my my application here, but then I also have a different see test is right here. So these are two separate things. Let me close a lot of this stuff so we don't need to see it. Okay. So in BitEngine, we have all of this, and then we also have something called, not shared, called tests. So tests are in a different world, it says, okay, which kind of makes sense. Maybe we'll see. Um, production Postgres, a sophisticated relational database that understands complex types like vector, okay? Test uses entity framework in memory. This isn't an actual database. Okay, so when we are using the, let me go into test. Let me close out a lot of this stuff. Then we'll try to bring it back up one by one. Okay, so when we go into test, we want BitEngine test, right? And then I want services, and let's just say bid selector test maybe. Okay. Now we have the mocking, right? So mock, this is Redis here. Okay. Here we go. So BitEngine data app DB context. Okay. So we're putting this into an option builder and then use in-memory database. Okay. So, okay. It is essentially a giant C# dictionary masquerading as a database. Okay, so this isn't actually a database, it's essentially it's a dictionary. Why it crashed. When you tried to add, model builder has Postgres extension vector. The in-memory provider threw a fit. I don't know what Postgres extension is. Well, hold on. This did not crash when I was doing the test, though. Okay. I'm just a list of objects in RAM. This is why your API crashed on startup. Okay, so what Copilot did. The fix Copilot implemented is called Provider Awareness Mapping. Okay, I'm going to write that down. So I'm going to say Provider Awareness Mapping. Interesting. Okay. Provider Aware Mapping. Okay. It added a logic gate inside of AppDB context. Yeah, we saw that. That checks the database, which database is currently connected. Which is why this, that I was saying, wait, wouldn't it always run? But I was thinking only in the context of the actual application, not the test. That makes sense. Okay. Embedding prop has column. Okay. Trick the in-memory provider into storing as a JSON string. Okay. So now we have a new character which has arrived on the scene, which is unit tests. So how are our unit tests interacting with this? And now there's another one within the unit test, which is the mocking services. Okay. So Copilot wrote a value converter that acts like a middleman. It takes the vector object, turns it. Okay, it takes the vector object. Wrote a value converter, and we saw that here. I hate that noise. A value converter here. So it's this long function, and we have a vector comparer here. Okay. It turns a JSON string like, okay, so a string of characters, but those characters to a human can look like numbers. Stores it in the dictionary. Loading. It reads the JSON string, recreates a new PG vector object, hands it back to your C# code. Okay. Because of this, your unit test can now save and load adds without the database ever needing to know what the PG vector is. Okay, so another thing that I'm going to write down is difference. There is a difference between what my C# knows and what my database knows. Between what my C# knows and my database knows. And what I'm meaning by that is, okay, so my C sharp can know what a PG vector is, but my database has no idea what a PG vector is. I think entity framework is what is going to be doing those mappings, right? And when my C sharp asks for a PG vector, it will, entity framework will create the SQL such that an actual vector is asked for. Then, when my database receives that, it crashes and says, hey, I don't know what that type that you just put in for the SQL query actually is. I don't know what type vector it means. Okay. And now with this one, I need to look into how the mocking works, but I have this mocking service that there's some problem that it doesn't recognize what the PG vector type is. And so my way around this is I'm still operating with PG vector on my C sharp side of things, but then whenever I need to go out to do something with the database, before I have entity framework pass it off into SQL, I change it to a string, then entity framework is able to pass that out to my database or my mocked database, and from that my database understands, oh, I know how to work with strings. Okay. Because of this, your unit test can now save and load adds without the database ever needing to know what a vector is. Okay, why the migrations were empty earlier. Previously, entity framework was paralyzed. It saw a PG vector property but had no instruction on how to turn it into a database column since you didn't have a translation for it. It just ignored it during the migration generation, leading to those empty up and down methods. By adding has column type vector here inside the is in PG block, you finally gave the dictionary it needs to translate. Okay, so did we actually, we have this, but I had that in the past too, right? So, summary of the 3 layers, local dev. Okay. So one critical warning about your future, because your tests are now use JSON strings instead of real vectors, your unit test cannot test things like cosine similarity or nearest neighbor searches. The test will confirm and you can save and retrieve and add. The test will not confirm that Postgres can eventually perform semantic search. Okay, so now I want to stay on the conceptual for a bit longer. Your job is to teach through analogies and help me understand from first principles how these are operating. It seems that we have multiple characters in this situation. The first character is my C# code, and the C# code has many different subcomponents. It has the class, which provides the appdb context. Then it has all of my other classes which model how the application, the table, how the table is, how the tables are to be structured in SQL. Okay. Like this, and then I'm going to say appdb context like this. Okay, the second character. The second character is this thing which is called entity framework. Entity framework seems to be a library which I install, but a separate service which is operating on its own free will. It seems like this character is the one which will go into my C# code, look at the specific place that it finds the character string appdb context, and then will scan that file and all of the dependencies which that file depends on. From there, every time I do an operation with the SQL database from my C#, it goes through Entity Framework as a mediator. Now this Entity Framework has settings which are determined by snapshots and migrations. It seems that Entity Framework has no actual memory of anything and will look at those documents of snapshot and migrations to get a sense of what the database actually is. But then I can use Entity Framework outside of my C# code to be able to perform a migration, which means that Entity Framework will go out and actually apply changes to my SQL database. Okay. This brings us to the third character. Alright. The third character is my actual SQL database. This is Postgres, which has been the custom one designed to have PG vector enabled. All right, so now Postgres is an engine that interacts with an actual database. And now it's seeming like Postgres also has some kind of memory as to certain things are or are not installed, such as libraries like pgvector. Therefore, if Entity Framework is attempting to communicate to this Postgres engine and asks for a PG vector, this will cause the Postgres character to become upset because he does not understand that word. Oops. I have no idea where his settings are, but I'm assuming it's going to be somewhere in my MacBook. Now we have the actual database, and this is the tables and columns and rows which are currently within my memory, stored in some kind of structured format which conforms to the SQL standards. Then we have another character, which is the unit tests. These unit tests interact with something which is mock, and this mock does not create a real, does not interact with the real character who is Postgres bit engine, but rather this mock simply is a key value return. Explain this in terms of how these characters interact, what they expect, how they set everything up, and how they keep their bearings of what settings and the situation at hand. How do you make all of these characters happy? Be as extensive as possible. Teach this in terms of a junior or mid-level software engineer. Okay, go. Okay. So, the cast of characters, yes. The architect, your C# code. The architect is brilliant but lives in a world of pure abstractions. He thinks in terms of objects, campaigns, ads, videos. He doesn't know what a row or table is. He only knows how to build a blueprint. Okay, by the way, I'm gonna take my time going through this. Okay. So we have an architect. This architect is very high level. He only cares about classes and objects. Yeah. So he knows about campaign, ads, videos. He doesn't know what a row or a table is. He only knows how to build a blueprint. Okay. The blueprint is this AppDB context. Okay, that we wrote that. There it is. And the POCO, plain old CLR objects. CLR. Okay. His flaw, he has no way to actually store anything. Okay. So he creates a blueprint, which is the AppDB context and then the actual classes. Okay. Okay. Makes sense. Everything is in abstractions. We still don't quite understand what AppDB context, how that class, how that abstraction, okay, gets translated into any of the other interactions. That's fine. We don't need to know about that yet. We're just focused on this character right now. And then we're going to figure out how this app.db context is used. Okay, his flaw. What is this flaw? Thinking about it. So if everything is in abstractions, I need a way to physically or to actually like save it into like, okay, I want this table and this column, and I want to input some data. Okay, it's saying his flaw. He has no way to actually store anything. If you turn the power off, everything vanishes. That makes sense. Okay. So the translator and the diplomat. Okay. Entity framework core. So entity framework is the translator. Okay. Is a high-level diplomat. He is the only one who speaks both architect, C#, and general, which is SQL. Okay. He speaks both languages. His memory, ledger. You were right. Entity framework has no innate memory. He relies on a ledger, which are the migrations. Okay. So the migrations folder not seeing, here it is his ledger. This allows entity framework. Okay, so this migration doesn't interact with my C# code, the architect. This here is generated by and used by entity framework. Now, entity framework can look at my C# code, and then that's how it generates this migrations, documents, ledgers. Okay. So, ledger. The model snapshot is a Polaroid photo of what the architect's blueprint looked like the last time they spoke. Okay, let's go in and look at the snapshot. Okay. So, okay. Pre-release relational model builder. Okay. Bid engine shared ads. Okay, so this is the namespace of the ad database. Of the ad, not database, sorry. The ad class. So I'm getting the class right here. This is the class name. Okay. Now, B here, property GUID ID, value generated on ad, has column, okay. It's required. Property vector, so we are having this vector here. So entity framework talked to my architect, C#, and said, okay, this is your blueprint right here. Let me generate your blueprint. And in the last time that they talked, we had the vector there. Okay. So now, let's see, I'm going to keep going down here. We have the campaign class. Okay. Has all of its things. Targeting rule. Has all of its. Okay. Video. Okay, and now probably about the key, or not keys, but like relations. Has one campaign. So one campaign has many ads. Foreign key is based off of campaign ID. Okay. On delete cascade required. Okay. So same thing here. Okay. All right. Let's keep reading. So let's entity framework. This is the and I know that I'm rereading it. I'm doing that on purpose. Okay. Entity framework is a high-level diplomat. He's the only one who speaks both architect and general. His memory is the ledger. You're right. Entity framework has no innate memory. He relies on the ledger, that migrations folder. Model snapshot. This is a Polaroid photo of what the architect's blueprint looked like the last time they spoke. Okay. The migration file. These are the work orders. Okay. Work orders. He writes to change the database. So remember how we said that there's two languages. There's the architect language and there's the general, okay? So he's looked at, okay. So he has memory, which is the snapshot. This is the last time that he interacted with my C# to look and say, okay, what should it look like? Okay. And then he can generate work orders. Let's say, all right, so in order, what I'm guessing it's going to be is kind of like this, is I'm going to say, oh, hey, me being C#, the architect, I'm going to say, hey, or actually me kind of being the outside, I'm going to say to the translator, go look at your memory, which means what the snapshot, okay? Then go look at the architect's current iteration of things, his current blueprint, find where your memory is different from the blueprint, then create work orders, SQL, to be able to say what you need to do to make the SQL from your current understanding of what it is up to what the architect's actual schema is. Okay. Migration files. These are the work orders he writes to change the database. Yep. Okay. The tool versus the library. The tool, .NET EF. This is the diplomat at his desk, comparing the architect's blueprint, current blueprint, to the last Polaroid, and writes new work orders. Okay. So I can talk to the diplomat at his desk. And I can ask him, hey, can you go see the current blueprint? Pull up the current blueprint and write work orders to be able to get the database up from your previous version schema, which is the snapshot, okay? Okay. This is the diplomat, the library. This is the using statement that we have. This is the diplomat in the field, sitting between your running app and the database, translating architect speak into SQL speak in real time. Okay, so he has two settings that he can be in, right? Not settings as in the computer settings, I mean like surrounding settings, because we're talking about characters right now, okay? These are characters. He can be at his desk, or he can be in the field. When he's at his desk, that's when I do the .NET EF and then migrations add and then whatever the new migration. And what that does is I'm telling this diplomat, hey, can you go in and pull up the latest blueprint from the architect, meaning my C# code, then go and compare it to your current last known state of the database and write work orders to be able to upgrade to match the C# architect. Then I think I can also do the .NET EF and then like run or something like that. And then that means execute those commands and actually bring the database up, not just create the work orders. Ooh, okay. Good thing I didn't spill my coffee. I got excited there apparently. Okay. Okay, so great. Understanding. The general Postgres engine. The general is rigid, powerful character. Okay, the general. Okay, not general as in like normal. General as in like the military general, you know? Okay, the general. Postgres engine. Here we go. The general is rigid, powerful character who lives inside a fortress, the Docker container. Okay, I like this. Here we go. The general. He doesn't care about blueprints. He only cares about his manifesto, the SQL schema. Okay. His settings. His memory is stored in the system catalogs. Okay. Okay, so he lives in Docker container. Okay, so the general lives in the Docker container. That makes sense. He doesn't care about blueprints. He only cares about his manifesto. Reasonable. Okay. And what is the manifesto? It is the SQL schema. Okay. But is the SQL schema like real? Okay. His settings. His memory is stored in the system catalogs. This is where he keeps the list of words he understands. Okay, I know what a varchar is. I know what an integer is. And if you haven't told him vector, nope. I don't want to hear about that. I don't want to hear about that nonsense. Don't tell me about vectors. I don't know what they are, and so don't tell me about them. Okay. The extension. The PG vector extension is like a specialized training manual. Until you give him that manual, create extension, the word vector sounds like gibberish to him, and he will shout at anyone who uses it. Yes! Okay, here we go. Shout out anyone who uses it. I like that. I like that a lot. Oh, this is a fun way of explaining it. He'll yell at anyone, or he'll shout at anyone who uses it. That's right. It's gibberish. Stop speaking that nonsense here in my fortress. My Docker container fortress, okay? The warehouse. This is the actual dirt and stone. The binary file stored in my MacBook's disk, mounted via Docker volumes, okay? The general guards the warehouse. That's right. Okay? Even if you fire the general, stop the container. Oh, I don't want to think about it like that. Even if you relieve the general of duty. Okay, there we go. That's nicer. Or rotate him, right? Like go somewhere else. The warehouse remains. Okay, yeah. When a new general arrives, see, because the old general, he just went to a different position. Okay, now we have a new general that rotated, not fired. Okay, when a new general arrives, he looks at the warehouse to see what's already built. Okay. The mimic is an actor hired for rehearsals, unit tests. He is cheap and fast. He pretends to be the general, but he's lazy, okay? His flaw, he doesn't read training manuals. If the architect says store this vector, meaning C# says store this vector, the mimic says sure, whatever, and just shoves it into a box, okay? But if the diplomat tries to give him a vector-specific command, the mimic panics because he only knows basic boxes, okay? The drama, the interaction, here we go. So, scene number 1, the design phase, migrations. Okay, so when you run .NET EF, so, okay, who are we talking to right now? .NET EF, we are talking to Entity Framework, which is the diplomat, and so we are talking to him at his desk. Migrations add. I believe this is, as I said before, and I'm just going to say it again so that I also get it in my head, that this is going to be what I'm doing is I'm asking the diplomat, Entity Framework, to go in, look at your current snapshot, and then go investigate the blueprint in my C# and write documents, work orders to bring up your current understanding to the how would you change from your current understanding to the current blueprint. Then what you can do is what I think it's going to do is create a new snapshot of that. Then I can tell it to actually perform those actions. Okay. He looks at his Polaroid. All right. He sees a vector in the blueprint, but his settings say he isn't allowed to use that word, vector, because Postgres extension is missing. He gets confused and writes an empty work order. Okay. So this is talking about one of the specific problems I had. I don't want to know about the specific problems I have right now. I'm trying to understand the general. The general meaning like non-descriptive, but like higher level, the abstract, conceptual understanding of everything. Okay, he gets confused and writes an empty work order. This makes the general Postgres think that there's nothing to do, so the warehouse never gets the vector column. Okay. The handshake, the startup. When the app starts, the diplomat goes to the general and says, here's who I am and here is what I need. If you has Postgres extension vector, the diplomat asks the general, do you have the vector training manual? Okay, let me think about that for a second. Okay, when the application starts, now the diplomat is no longer at his desk. He's in the field. Okay. Here's who I am and here's who I need. And here's what I need, okay? If I add this, the diplomat asks the general, do you have the vector training manual? Has Postgres. Okay, so this is giving the... Okay, so this is trying to get... This is at runtime, and this is within my Here's the snapshot. This is within my context, and this is actually one that we commented out, I believe. Yeah. So this one, I'm going to the general, Postgres, and saying, not me, not me, not me, not me. Sorry. The diplomat sees this line during real-time execution, okay? And it says to the general, do you have the training manual for vector? Now the general is going to shout at him because he doesn't like that word. He doesn't know what vector means, right? If the general doesn't have it, he refuses to work. Communication breaks, the front end, an outside observer, sees the diplomat and architect arguing and realizes no data is coming out. Okay. Okay. The rehearsal, the unit test. All right. The architect and diplomat go to work with the mimic. Okay, so the architect, C#, the diplomat, entity framework, are working with the actor. Okay, and this actor is that mock. If the diplomat tries to act like a pro and says, this is a vector of 384 dimensions type, the mimic breaks character. I don't know what that is, I'm just a C# dictionary, okay? The fix. Your co-pilot told the diplomat, when you work with the mimic, pretend the vector is just a string. When you work with the general, use the real vector. Okay. Okay. I feel like I definitely have more questions, but I'm understanding how this is playing together. Now, what are my questions? Okay. Let's see how much more. All right. Let that sink in for a couple of seconds. All right. How to keep everyone happy. First principles. To have a functioning system, you must satisfy the needs of every character. Yep, makes sense. Satisfy the general, which is Postgres. You must ensure he has the training manual. Create extension. You did this via startup SQL. Okay. Right. How do our startup SQLs interact with this as well? I'm thinking right now that it says that the general, which is the guard, okay, he has knowledge of all of these objects. Okay. And so if the warehouse is different, right? Okay, I think it said that the general will go and look at the warehouse and see how it's set up. And in there, in the warehouse, there will be a manual for the vector. I think that's what is going on. So, I'm just going to say, here are some more questions that I have that I'm not sure if my conceptual understanding is accurate. Let me know if I am getting it right. Let me know if I get something wrong, and expand on anything that you feel would be good to understand. Okay. Number one is going to be, so when I run my startup scripts, this action occurs whenever my Docker container for Postgres notices that there is no data at the volume location. So this is like the general realizing that the warehouse has not been built. Under this situation, how does the general know where to search for the SQL startup scripts in order to start building? Now, in the occasion where the warehouse is built up and there is data in the warehouse, because my startup script had that line about create extension, this is like the manual being in the warehouse. So when a new general comes in, he sees that there is a warehouse, doesn't go to the startup scripts to build anything, but rather looks and inspects the warehouse to see all of the objects. I'm not going to use the word objects. All of the data, tables, columns, etc., which are in the warehouse. One of those things which he finds in the warehouse is the instruction manual called vector. Now he has an understanding of what a vector is, completely independent of anything that the architect or the entity framework have told him. Okay. Okay, so that's a follow-up question number one. All right, so satisfy the general. This via the startups, okay. Satisfy the entity framework. He needs to know that vector is a valid word, okay. You do this by installing pgvector entity framework plugin and telling him use vector, okay. Use vector is in program.cs, so let's go there. Let me bring myself down oh right, I closed everything, okay. Where'd you go? Here it is. Okay, all right, so this one, we have the use vector right there. We also have this use vector. So data source, data builder, build this data source, okay, and then use here. So maybe I don't understand exactly how this is occurring. So we're building a, I don't know what that is, right? NPG SQL. What is this? NPG SQL comes from, so we have this PG vector right there. We have NPG SQL here. And then add, not app, but add DB context specifically for this class, okay? And then this has a method, or no, sorry. This is a method, right? Is that right? It's a method made for this object. Okay, yeah. And I pass in options, or it passes in options. I think that this is actually a function. Let me see if I can get the... Okay, come on. I am right in the way. Okay, awesome. Come on. Okay. iAction. What is this? Interface? No, sorry. That's not iAction, that's a bracket. Okay, never mind. Options, actions, null. Service lifetime equals what? Like, what are we supposed to put in here? Apparently this, but I don't know why. But options. Okay, wait, did I see options in there? Action. Option action. Okay, service lifetime, all of those don't matter. This is the only thing that I see option. So DB context option builder, which I believe it is what we saw up there. By default, it's none, but you can pass it in, which we did. So we passed in options. It'll take options. Use NPG SQL. We don't know what that is yet. But this will come in here and we'll have the data source. Why did we do this use vector on the data source, which is my connection string? NPG SQL options. Okay. Use vector. Okay. So that is telling the diplomat he needs to know vector is a valid word. You do this by installing the PG Vector Entity Framework Core plugin and telling him use vector. But I do that in 2 spots. Okay. So the follow-up is going to be here. I noticed that I use the phrase use vector twice in my program.cs. Okay. Like this. Copy this and paste it into here. Okay, and now what is this couple lines doing and how are they working and setting everything up? Okay. So, satisfy the warehouse, you must ensure the work orders migrations actually contain the instructions to build the columns. Okay. That the work order migrations actually contain the instructions to build the columns. If the work order is empty, the warehouse stays empty. Okay. You must give him a simplified version of the data, JSON strings, because he isn't smart enough to handle real vectors. Okay, I'm not worried about why it broke. I'm worried about the concepts. What was I on? 4? No, 2. Okay, so now I am on 3. Okay. if I destroy the warehouse by deleting the data and volume at my local MacBook, then what is going to happen is that the general is going to go and look at my startup scripts, and from this he will build the warehouse from scratch. When I upload my code to GitHub, the reason that my startup scripts are able to be ran is because GitHub has everything brand new as if it was a first time run. This means that it is a new general with a non-existent warehouse. So he goes and looks at my startup scripts and tries to build everything from scratch. And in my startup scripts, there are documents which are the manual for what use vector is. Now, the entity framework, Diplomat, looks at my... Now, during execution, my code will hit those lines which I just pasted in the question above, and see that I am telling Entity Framework to use the PG vector that sure, I am telling. This means that now the architect has an idea about what this word is and will be trying to speak this vector word each time I do an operation that requires vector from my C#. Okay. See if that is more or less accurate. Okay. Alright, so the general and warehouse. How does the general know where to search? The Postgres Docker image is pre-programmed with specific loading dock locations. Okay. The Postgres Docker image is pre-programmed with specific loading dock locations. Okay? When the container starts, the general looks at the specific folder. Docker entry point. Okay, let's look at that. I believe that is in my Docker compose. So I go to Postgres here, and I thought I saw like startups or something. Infrastructure. Okay. Infrastructure, database, migration. Okay, interesting. Here's where one volume is. Infrastructure. Database, migrations. Okay. Look at migrations. Then Docker entry point, okay. Docker entry point here. So this is his location. And I think we like copied this volume into there. So we copied the migration into his like loading dock. When the general starts, the general looks at the specific folder. If he finds any SQL files there and the warehouse, the volume is empty, he executes them in alphabetical order. So we previously had, I believe, oh wait, no, that was up here. We changed them. Infrastructure, database migration. Oh, okay, here we go. It's not this migration. It's not this migration. It's this migration. Okay. Now I'm starting to see it. Okay. So we have a location here, and this is inside of Docker. This is the entry point, which the general is going to look at to say, hey, what should I do if there's nothing there? What's going to happen is I load my current, my MacBook's location, which is infrastructure database migrations. I load all of this folder into this location. The reason that I put those BAK right there is so that he doesn't run these scripts, because I don't want these scripts to be ran anymore. I only want this one to be run. This is my initialization script, that my updated one, okay? So now we copy that, and this is where he looks. And in the past, he would do it in alphabetical order. He still does it, but now there's only one of them there. So, okay, okay, here we go. What if the warehouse already exists? You're right. If the warehouse, the volume on my MacBook has data, the general says I don't need the startup scripts. I have the actual warehouse. Okay. The manual. The PG vector extension is actually stored inside the warehouse system tables. Okay. The realization. When the general inspects the warehouse, he sees the vector manual. When he inspects the warehouse, he sees the vector manual already sitting on the shelf. Okay. He reads it and instantly becomes vector literate without ever touching your startup scripts or hearing from the architect. Yes. Okay, we're starting to make progress. Okay. Yes. So, the two use vector commands. All right, here we go. So, the low level driver. So, the high level diplomat. Okay. So, let's take a I wish I had some more coffee. I would take a couple seconds of break, but I'm gonna stretch instead. Oh, okay. All right. The two use vector commands, the secret sauce. Okay, so we have in our program.cs, we have those two lines. This is the part that confuses many mid-level engineers. Okay. You aren't just telling one person about vectors, you're telling two different subcharacters. Okay. The low-level driver. This NPG SQL data source builder. Okay. The character. This is the courier. The low-level NPG SQL driver. Okay. It handles the raw binary data. NPG SQL handles the low-level binary data. I don't know how to carry this. Okay. It's too heavy and weird. This line teaches the courier how to pack and unpack vector data for the trip between C# and Postgres Fortress. Okay. Okay, this is the thing that, okay. The high level diplomat, the character. This is the diplomat. What it does, it teaches, or this line here, options. First one is data source builder. Let me go to my program. Oh, okay. Here. So this one, we're doing the data source builder, and I get an NPG SQL data source builder. So I am talking to the courier right now, and this will actually tell it to use the vector, so teaches it how to use vector. Okay. And then I build that, okay. So using this low-level driver that now knows how to use the vector, okay. Then options dot this here. What it does, this teaches the diplomat how to write SQL lines. Okay. It tells him when the architect asks for an embedding in C#, I want you to write the word vector in SQL. Okay. So now the GitHub CI/CD situation. You're almost 100% right about GitHub, but there's one critical catch that was causing 11 test failures. When you upload your code to GitHub, GitHub Action Runner starts a fresh Postgres general. Yep. The gap, unless you specifically told GitHub Actions to mount your startup SQL file into Docker entry point, the general starts with an empty warehouse and no startup scripts. To mount the rescue attempt. Usually .NET developers don't use startup scripts on GitHub. Instead, they rely on the architect to tell the diplomat to build the database using context database migrate. Okay. So that line that we commented out, if your ledger, the migration, was empty, the diplomat didn't know how to build the warehouse. Even if the architect was shouting, use vector, the diplomat had no instructions in his ledger to tell the general create a column of vectors. Okay. But we didn't actually uncomment that line. You see here, it's still commented out. And did we even, what is our migration situation? Okay, so we didn't uncomment this out. So this one is true. confusing. Okay. The general arrives. The diplomat looks at his ledger, now updated with vector instructions. Our local convenience. They are a great way for your MacBook, but brittle because they have to remember to copy them to every new environment. Okay? Okay. By moving the vector logic into the appdb context, you moved the responsibility from a local script to the official ledger. This is why your code is now environment agnostic and works wherever it lands. But once again, we didn't really do that because we commented this one out. No, but this one, we are up here telling entity framework about it. Okay. So I understand the characters better now. I'm still trying to understand. Let me... The general starts with an empty warehouse and no start scripts. But, okay, so I actually think that what's going on in GitHub is not completely accurate because I think that my... First off, I'm not talking to the general. Because the general is mocked in my... That's the actor. The actor is... Here's the word vector. No, it doesn't hear the word vector. It only hears the word string. Because I've told the diplomat, whenever you hear the word vector, I want you to substitute the word string. And then the actor is happy because it knows how to deal with a string. Okay. So that's why it's not crashing in my GitHub anymore. Because I'm not even trying to communicate to the real general at all. So he doesn't see my database because he's not there. Nothing is there. The warehouse doesn't exist, and the general isn't there. Both of them. Okay? So then it's passing. But now Gemini is telling me that this is actually not a good long-term solution. It is okay. But then, why did my program crash when I added this line? It crashed in production, okay? which means we're not dealing with the actor anymore. We're dealing with the real characters. This thing here should be for entity framework. So entity framework should be what is upset right now, I think. Okay, so I've already told entity framework knows about this vector. But it is still complaining when we say this. The migrations are work orders. And the snapshot is his last understanding of things. Do we have video in here actually? Let me check. So we do have video, okay. 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 Context DB migrate is in here. To build the database using. Okay. Build the database. So when I have this line of code, it means that even if I have the warehouse and the general, which are already created, that the diplomat is now going to look at the snapshot and look at my C# architect blueprint and build out new work orders and then execute the code to give to the general to upgrade his warehouse. Is this correct? Does this his most important work. Your description is almost perfect, but there's one tiny brilliant error or detail about how he handles memory. Okay. So, the work order handshake. When this runs, the diplomat doesn't blindly shout orders. He performs a very specific check. Okay. Checking the general's records. Inside the warehouse, the database, there is a hidden tiny table called EF migration history. This is the general's complete work log. So, consulting the ledger. The diplomat looks at the ledger, my migrations folder in my C# code. Okay. The comparison. If the ledger has a work order called add PG vector support, but the general's complete work log doesn't, it shows the diplomat. It shows it. The diplomat says, aha, general, we have an upgrade to perform. He then executes the specific work order. Okay, that's also new information. Trying to put all of this in my head. Like, come on, cram it. If the completed work log already shows that it's done, the diplomat says, all good, we're up to date, and does nothing. Okay. Alright, so there is a hidden file inside of my warehouse, the Postgres database. Okay. Or the actual warehouse, sorry, not the general's tower. But it's called EF Migrations History, and it keeps a log of the different migrations which have occurred. So it looks to see, like, do we have this migration? And if we don't, that's when the diplomat tells the general, hey, you need to execute these commands, which are in the specific migrations. Okay. If the ledger... Okay. So then why would this line cause it to fail? Like, okay. If the ledger has a work order called add PG vector support, but the general's complete work doesn't, the diplomat says that we have some work to and executes those work orders. If it already shows up, the diplomat says all good, we're up to date, and does absolutely nothing. Okay. Does he look at the snapshot or the blueprint? Here is one subtle correction. During migrate, the diplomat does not look at the C# classes or the snapshot. The blueprint and snapshot are only used. Blueprint is C# classes, okay? Snapshot are only used when you are at your desk typing .NET Entity Framework Migrations add. That is when he creates the work order, okay? The migrate command only looks at the work orders, okay? Those things listed, got it, I see, that were already written and saved. Think of it like this. .NET EF migration add is writing instructions while this is following the instructions. Answering your scenario. Upgrade the warehouse. Yes, you are exactly right. If you add a new column to adds class tomorrow, the architect meaning C#, okay? Change the code. You run .NET EF migrations add, okay? The diplomat looks at the blueprint for add price, okay? And sees new price and writes a new work order, okay? You push to GitHub or run your app locally. This database migrate runs. The diplomat sees price to adds in the ledger but is missing in the general's complete work log. He gives the general the command to upgrade the warehouse, and the price column is born. Okay. The multiple path summary. This is why your app is so stable. There are 3 ways to get the warehouse built, and they all work together. The developer, the startup SQL, the first time Docker starts, fast local setup, okay? The diplomat, you do this .NET add, and then during runtime you can have the migrate, okay? One final principle, the state. In your earlier frustration, you felt like the app didn't know what was happening on the remote. Now you see the state is kept in this migration history table. As long as the table and migration files stay in sync, the architect, diplomat, and general will never have a communication breakdown again. Okay. Now let's go a little bit more in depth about how the architect actually is able to gather the information on my the architect's blueprints. Okay, so I have appdb context. My program.cs file has those lines of code which I now understand are interacting with the low-level driver, which is the courier. And then it is doing what? It is telling entity framework to use vector, which now causes entity framework to have that word in its vocabulary. Okay, yes. But then what is the appdb context class doing, and how does entity framework use it? One point of confusion which I currently have is that actually in my appdb context, I still have that line commented out, and everything seems to be working properly. Okay. Just copy and paste this entire thing. Okay, let's see what it says about this. It feels like you've found a hole in the logic, but what you've actually found is the difference between building the warehouse and operating the warehouse. Okay, building the warehouse, operating the warehouse. Let's use our characters to explain. Yes, I like this. I like this way of explaining it. It's when it's using the characters and analogies, I'm able to understand things so much better and actually figure out, okay, well, how are each of these things playing together, interacting? What are they expecting from each other? How is all of this occurring? And then when I'm actually doing my project, I'm hoping that I'll be able to have a better understanding. Obviously, I'm still going to run into so many issues because, like, I always run into issues. I don't, but uh, at least now I find it usually like in the past this looking at history like the previous stuff that I've worked on, once I have kind of a general idea of the entities which are I'm trying to interact with, then I'm able to more easily interact with them purposefully. And as I said, like I really dislike just changing settings until something works, because at that point it's just doing combinations and permutations until the lock opens, and then next time, or you change one thing but you don't know what you're actually changing, and then you lock it and you're like, I don't know, so then you try every combination until it finally opens, and then you're terrified. And this is like, actually, that's a legitimate word. um, a legitimate way of describing it, I think, is like terrified to make any change because you think that you're going to lock the entire system. And that's the way that I feel a lot of times when I'm developing my projects. Is just terror. I'm terrified to change something because I think I'm going to break it. So I need to work on that and try to overcome that mental thing. Okay, so building a warehouse and operating a warehouse. Let's use our characters to explain why your app works with that line commented out and exactly how AppDB context gathers its information. Okay. The gathering. How the blueprint is made. Okay, the blueprint is the classes and everything. That's created by the architect, which is C sharp, and the diplomat entity framework uses the blueprint, like looks at it and is able to understand it. And then they create the work orders and the Polaroid snapshot. Okay. So, when the diplomat starts up, he needs to build his internal mental map of your data. Reasonable. He doesn't just read AppDB context file. He uses a process called reflection. Okay, so we've kind of dealt with reflection, like we've heard of this concept in the past, and this is when the code is able to inspect itself. Okay. Step one, the entrance. He looks at the DB set properties, like DB set add ads. Okay. This tells him, okay, the architect wants a table for ads. Okay. Step two is the deep dive. He looks at the add class itself. He scans every property of that class. Okay, so he's going to the add class. And he has the ability, because he is entity framework, he's the diplomat, and he speaks both C sharp and SQL. And he's able to inspect my code through reflection. Okay. He then looks at add class itself. He scans every property. If he sees public string title, he notes down a text column. Okay. Okay. The customizations. Finally, he runs the on model creating method. Then entity framework, okay. This is where the architect provides the specific fine print that reflection can't guess, like lowercase table names or specific SQL types. Fine print, okay. On model creating, I know that we do that up here. Oh, this is base on model creating. But that's inherits from the parent, which is DB context. But we have this model builder here, right? Maybe this is the fine print. Okay. Why does it work with that that line commented out? You notice this is commented out, yet your app still works. Here's why. The diplomat versus the general's training. The line has Postgres extension vector is a deployment instruction. Its only job is to tell the diplomat. If the general doesn't have the vector manual installed, you have permission to install it for him during a migration. Okay. Locally, your general already has the manual because you ran the startup SQL scripts. The warehouse is already built. The diplomat doesn't need to tell the general to get the manual because he already sees it on the shelf at runtime. When you save and add, the diplomat just says, put this in the embedding column. Since the column exists and the courier knows how to carry it, thanks to use vector and program.cs, it just works. Okay, why the line exists at all. If you ever move to a brand new database without startup scripts, you ran this DB database migrate, the diplomat would look at his work orders. If this line is commented out, the diplomat won't tell the general to enable the extensions. The general will fail when he tries to create a column type like vector 384 because he doesn't know that word yet. Okay. So we get this right here. The workaround in AppDB context. Your copilot added a very clear conditional branch here. Is in PG SQL. This is the architect, C#, right? That makes sense. Telling the diplomat, if you're talking to the real general, use this word. If you're talking to the mimic, don't use that word. Okay. Okay. I am a little bit afraid to do this, but as I just said, I want to try to conquer some of my fears about like not changing the setting, right? So yes, I would like to try this. The steps that I think I should take is I should uncomment that line out, and then from my command terminal I should add from the command terminal I should tell the diplomat to perform or create a migration work order. Then I should rebuild my Docker container and run the code. Because I have the line which causes a migration, the diplomat will go in and see that one of the work orders is not in existence within the hidden file in the warehouse. He will then attempt to tell the general to update the warehouse to have embeddings. What was it called? Embeddings? What was it called? So a vector. Okay. You have the sequence exactly right. Okay. However, one small nuance: since the general Postgres already has vector manual installed from your manual startup script, he won't be upset. But the diplomat needs to record his complete work log. That he has one. That he was the one who authorized it. So. Uncomment this line, write the work order, okay, yes, what to look for, open the new migration file, and I should see stuff inside of my migration like up file. So migrate builder, alter database, annotate. Okay, I should see this. Okay, the diplomat officially adding the manual in his ledger. Execute the work order, .NET run project, or just Docker compose up, okay? What happens in the warehouse during step 3? The diplomat looks at the warehouses, here. He finalizes vector extensions is missing. He tells the general, hey, make sure vector extension is installed. The general looks at the shelf and says, I already have it because of your startup script. The general doesn't crash, he just says okay. Postgres handles this gracefully if it's already there. Okay. They're all in agreement. So let's do this one by one. So first step is we're going to uncomment this. Okay. Second step, we are going to go and create the work order. Okay. Here. And we're going to see it reflected there. So let's bring this out. Now, do this and press go. Build succeeded. Undo the action. Okay. Now, what did it say? Okay. So we have these two documents now. This one. Here it is. Okay, that's correct. And now this is a snapshot. No, not a snapshot. This is, oh, I forgot about what this one is. This is what the snapshot is modified. Do we see that though? The snapshot is modified. Okay, because that's the Polaroid camera. The snapshot is modified. How is it modified? Does it tell me the spots that are modified? No. Yes. Yes, it does. Okay. There's the snapshot. That means that means that the diplomat has in his that the diplomat has in his memory that this is his last known state of the database, okay? The last time he talked to the architect. Okay, yes. Now, here is the work order to change it from the previous one to here. Okay. These two. Okay. So now okay. We run it. So Docker compose up. Okay. Let all of this do its stuff. And sometimes I crash when okay, well, speaking of crashing, so my computer is not very powerful, so it always has a little bit of difficulty when trying to do the Docker compose up. There's too much going on. Okay, so I have to wait a little bit before it actually works, but let me. Okay, I think we're gonna be okay. So I'm gonna reload my page. Hopefully this works. Are we ready? Go. Come on. Okay. Did it load? No, not yet. Failed to open page, darn. Okay. I still see. Yeah. My computer is still like. I can't even scroll right now because it's not. I can't click on anything. Does it need to take its time or like what's happening? I don't know. I don't know if something crashed. I have no idea. I can't really look at anything because my computer is just frozen. Okay. Okay, we have Kafka here. A whole bunch of Kafka, a whole bunch of Kafka. Bitengine here. Okay. I'm going to try to copy and paste some of this stuff. So copy that. And then I want to try to reload this. Okay. So we got some movement down there. It's not doing anything here. Okay. Well, do we get any useful information like what might happen here? bid engine, here, decision, campaign. It worked. It's just extremely slow. It worked. It was just extremely slow. Let me try refreshing it again. There we go. See, we're getting ads. And they're changing. Okay. And now it's fast. It just was taking forever to start up. Yes. Okay, we're starting. Okay, okay. I feel like I really liked this time that I just spent here being able to investigate this. I feel like it was a very good way of investigating these concepts and gaining an understanding. I am obviously probably going to struggle more in the future with them, right? Like I don't know how long this video has gone on, but maybe probably about an hour, right? One hour investigation into these concepts isn't going to like automatically make us experts of this and never have a problem with it again. By the way, I'm going to close down the entity or this one so that it doesn't just like eat up my RAM. So let's see. Once okay, there we go. Okay, so now I'm a lot better, right? Here I am. Okay. But anyways, yeah. So now that obviously with one hour long investigation into these concepts, I'm not expecting that I am going to be much more how should I say this? That I am going to be a master of all of these topics. Obviously, as we move forward, we're going to run into more issues and more issues and more issues. But I think now I have a much better framework from which to understand and conceptualize these ideas and entities which I am interacting with, and I can move more confidently forward in my project. So moving forward, what I'm going to be doing is continuing to work on getting my project up and running, getting a working semantic search using vectorization, and yeah, we're going to be moving forward on this project. I'm super excited about it. I'm learning a ton. I'm very glad with today's video. And then obviously I can't remember how many videos I've done today. I think it's only like one or two. But yeah, I'm very happy with the video that we just did now. Learned a ton and have learned so much in this project overall that yeah, I'm having a good time. Subscribe if you want to join along on the journey. And yeah, thank you for watching. My name is Timothy Lee Grant, and I'll see you guys in the next video coming right up. All right.